to welcome Dave Sanchez here on our Insight series. Dave is a school psychologist, or was. I'm not sure if you still currently work with schools.
Yeah, this was in the past. I still do some gifted evaluations, but yeah.
Awesome. She's an emotional and spiritual intelligence facilitator, and she was the founder, or is the founder of 2E Minds. You collaborate with families to help gifted, neurodiverse and highly sensitive children channel their creative energy effectively, and it's building the essential skills to cultivate a life of meaning, purpose and creativity. So you also grew up as a highly sensitive individual yourself, and through that you've developed a variety of strategies and tools to help children that you work with that have, the similar needs. And you combine, which I really loved about our intro talk as well, like the strong scientific background with the intuitive gifts to guide children into identifying the mental roadblocks, habitual patterns, and preventing them from developing. Identifying those roadblocks that may be inhibiting their developing their natural strengths, gifts, and abilities. Yeah. And your approach draws on the social and emotional learning and positive psychology, neuroscience, and cognitive behavioural techniques, which I absolutely love. So I'm so excited because you bring such that balance of the science and the intuitive gifts in your work. So I'm going to hand over to you, Day, rather than me just continue to talk. And so, yeah, if you could maybe talk maybe first about your experience with yourself, your personal experience, and then I'm assuming that led on to the creation of 2E Minds and sort of how that all came together.
Yes, well, thank you so much for that intro, and thank you so much for creating this platform. I think this is very needed right now. We need to be having these conversations and letting kids know that whatever they're feeling and experiencing is totally normal and okay. And so I really appreciate you opening up these conversations. And yeah, so my background, I say that I am a school psychologist by degree. So I went into psychology and wanting to learn more about the mind and to understand the mind. And I ended up working in school psychology because I wanted to help children. And I realized that there were many children who were very bright and very intelligent, and they were also having difficulties with either their emotions or their behaviors. Some of them had trouble learning, so they were really advanced in some areas, but also really behind in other areas. So there was this what people call asynchronous development. So sometimes emotionally they were, they will act like a 4-year-old and their intellectual abilities will be higher. And so, yeah, I got really drawn to working with this type of children. And then I realized that their needs were not really being met in the school system. And don't even get me started with the school system. But yeah, basically, I worked for about 8 years within the system. And then there was a point when I said, this is not going anywhere. It was almost like pushing, like I was trying to do my work and my job, but it was really difficult with all the different pieces of that go into the public education system, at least here in the United States. I know there are some countries that are a little bit more advanced and more open. But so I left the school district around 2017, the end of 2017. And I started doing my own thing and working with families. So initially, what I started doing was working with families who were having difficulties meeting the needs of their children within the school system. So because I had that background and I knew what was going on in schools and all of that, I was able to guide the parents and help them advocate for their kids' needs and get those services that they needed. And yeah, that I think I shared a little bit with you about how the whole 2E Minds company has been evolving to being more aligned to my own evolution as I'm evolving and learning and growing, and my purpose is also evolving. I'm moving away from advocating or helping parents advocate for children in the school systems, and helping them more with their emotional well-being outside of the schools, because it's like a really pushy energy, and it's really difficult to be in that energy.
So independent to the schools.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, that's so beautiful. What amazing work that you're doing. And so tell me about your experience. Yeah.
So my experience I can tell you about my emotional experience growing up, or the learning experience growing up. So in terms of learning, I was always, I had a lot of difficulties in school, and especially with math and numbers and things like that, and also with calming down my own energy, and what you would call children with
numbers and things like that. I'm sorry. I was just making sure that we're alive. Keep going.
So that's scattered energy, being able to ground that energy. And that's something that I have been working on as an adult, but I didn't know all these things back then when I was a child. And in terms of learning, my peers were really surprised that I even graduated, because till the last day before the graduation, I was still trying to catch up and do things that I needed to do before, so that I could graduate. And in terms of emotions and energy and all of that, I think my challenges, when you asked me about these challenges growing up, I think that it was really about my own energy and being able to navigate the world, knowing that, or not knowing that, I was very sensitive to the energy of other people, and that I was picking up on, their intentions, or like I could see more than what other people could see, and so I will respond to that in a way that they will also respond. Like, so it was like a feedback loop, and so eventually, as I learned about energy and all these things, I learned to create my own boundaries and to be in my body, and to not open when people were giving energy that I didn't want to receive. Just learning how to close myself and only open when it was safe. And this is also what I teach children, to be in their bodies, and to be very comfortable with knowing, just learning about the subtle sensations in their bodies, and understanding when something is not theirs and something is coming from someone else, or even from a place, from an environment. And helping them build those boundaries, and also with time helping them to put those boundaries down, or fade those boundaries when it's safe to do so, because we do have to function in this society and in this 3D world. So we do have to find ways to navigate our aesthetic beings in this physical dimension, in this physical world. So there's a lot of what I do, especially with children who have ADHD or children with autism. Their sensory systems are very all over the place. So their energy is very scattered and all over the place. And sometimes they don't even know how to manage that. So they're jumping around, they're bouncing off the walls. And parents sometimes don't understand this. And so, or teachers don't understand this, and they're wanting these kids to be sitting for long periods of time and paying attention to something that is not even engaging for them. And no wonder these kids feel like they are not able to learn, and they're not really, they're just putting all their efforts to learning, and it's just not possible for them and their bodies and their sensory systems. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that was beautiful, and it makes so much sense. And how do you find how receptive the children are to you talking about their energies and applying what you teach them? I imagine they pick it up quite quickly.
Yeah, so children are very open and children pick it up very quickly, especially like the younger they are, the more open they are to it, right? Because I would say maybe parents sometimes are not super understanding of these dynamics of energy. But for children, especially the younger ones, like preschool age, I really love working with this age because they're they have a lot of insight on why they get upset and this kid did this to me and this is why I got upset. But they're not always going to share these things if you don't know how to get to their level. That you really have to get to that point where they're going to feel safe and they're going to be able to share what is really going on and what is truly going on. And sometimes, teachers might not even have the time to ask them or to even receive what the child is saying. And the same energy that the teacher is projecting on the child, maybe a teacher needs to get back to teaching and she's rushing and she needs to do this or that. So the child might feel like they're not being received and they're not being heard, so they don't feel understood, and that creates even more behaviors and more trouble because they're not really connecting with the adult. And so a lot of the work that I do is kind of helping the adult and the child get to the same point, and helping the parents understand where the child is coming from, and also helping the child understand where the parents or teachers are coming from, so that there can be like a middle ground, and it's not just like picking sides, but it's also teaching children how to navigate in this world. And yeah, I think they're really open, at least to my approach. And obviously this was something that I learned more strategies as I worked more with them, especially with gifted children and twice exceptional children. I learned even more strategies, and because I myself had a lot of difficulties growing up, and learning challenges and emotional challenges, they can relate to me in that way, and they can share more because I'm open and I share these struggles with them, and so they see the human in me, and that then they can share more. Um,
I love that. They see the human in you. I love that. And I look back and I was really not engaged at school at all, like I really was lucky to get right through to what we call was, bursary level, the last year of school. It was Form 7. I don't know what they call the years now. I get confused. Shows my, my age as well, I guess. But looking back, and even now I've recognized, I have, I guess you'd call it dyslexia, and, I don't have it severely, but I struggle with learning. I struggle with retention of information. Even now I'm learning skills that help me with that. But, I didn't get any support whatsoever. I just fumbled through, and we're talking a number of years ago, obviously, but, I think the work you're doing is just so incredibly important. And I think what I loved about what you just said as well is it's not just about the parent understanding the child, but the child understanding where the adult or the teacher or the parent is coming from. I think that's a big piece that often is overlooked. And this must be so incredibly refreshing for the child to actually try and, to have that awareness of the different aspects of where a parent's coming from, and obviously their desires to ensure that the child does well, and the segregation isn't there. And I imagine it must be quite challenging with parents working with their children, and lack of a better word, a little bit of a battle with the school system of trying to get them to really help that child. Have you seen much in the way of if the parents are going back to the schools and kind of trying to explain that this is how their children may learn best? Is it openly received within the limitations, obviously, of teaching, or are you finding that it's not so much?
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons why I kind of moved away from helping parents in that area, because parents are very receptive, and the parents that come to me, they're very open and receptive, and they, at the point that they come to me, they have tried everything, and so they're really willing to experiment with different strategies, and to really figure out what's going on with their child and how they can help them. But that's parents. The schools that's a different story. And I worked a lot with parents, helping them, giving them the language to communicate with the schools, and even writing, teaching them how to write the letters so that they will get the services that they needed if it was appropriate. And yeah, just working on the accommodations or the type of strategies that will work for their child, the in the very unique needs of every child. But the schools are not receptive at all. It's really difficult to try to work with the schools. And so I moved away a little bit from that, and I noticed that as soon as I removed those services in my website, more families that were more aligned to what I wanted to do, they started to come just super easily. Like the next day, they started to call me and reach out to me, and I felt a lot more in alignment, and also I felt more space when I wasn't really kind of fighting on or in that toxic energy of the schools. And I would love to continue helping parents in that area, but it's just like not sustainable for me, because then my energy is going to be drained, and I'm not going to have a space for the things that I do want to do and that I do want to help with, that I'm truly passionate about, which is more of what I'm doing right now. But yeah, I think it's really important to be honest with ourselves, and to, when something is not making us joyful, and it's not making us super excited, then we should say no to that. And that's part of creating boundaries. So with your company as well, we have to create boundaries, and move away from those things that are not going to make us happy and excited, because what's the point if we're not enjoying our work?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's calling in the energy of the people you want to work with, which I see is what you're doing, and it's beautiful. Yes. Yeah. So how do you see, or how do you find the intuitive side working with the science of the work you do, and how receptive the parents are? Do you find that the people that come to you are quite open to that intuitive side as well? You mentioned a little bit that you've got quite strong intuition, and that often helps you connect to the children or understand what's going on if they can't maybe physically verbalize or explain to you.
Yes. So that has increased more. Like, I've been calling in more of those parents that are very open, and they're even coming to terms with the fact that we are more multidimensional than just this dimension. And so some parents start to understand that energy, we're energetic beings, and energy is going to affect us. And so the part about the intuition, it's really like they see that I'm very intuitive, and that I can really easily tell and really quickly tell what's happening with the child, even before meeting the child, just by tuning into myself and all the information. And I guess that's really my gift, just tuning into all the information. And then when I meet the child, kind of confirm that the information that I got was actually accurate. And also using the science, and using the science-based strategies and tools to help with that, but using the intuition to guide what kind of strategies will be good for this family, and what kind of strategies they might not they might not be good for them. So it's about combining that intuition with scientific strategies. And parents are open to it because it works. And so they can see that it's something is changing in their child, when a lot of they tried a lot of different things in the past and nothing had worked. And so I think this is it's something that it's starting to be even more there's more awareness of this. In the past, people will mm, anything that we don't understand, we tend to move away from it, or just like, not try to understand it. But I think there's more awareness about that, and about how um, what you call metaphysical stuff or other dimensional stuff is really happening at the same time that this is happening, like this physical dimension is happening, and we don't we don't we don't know what else is happening around us right now. But a lot of kids are very aware of that, and it's really about teaching them how to understand that, and also how to communicate that. Because if you think about it, some kids, for example, someone who is very psychically open, and um, they might see things that other people don't see. um, it's not, um as adults, we don't share everything that we see. Like, I'm pretty sure you and I, if we see things, we don't always share those things with everybody. And the same with children. It's important for them to communicate these things only when it's needed, and when the people
Yeah.
that need to hear that, and that are going to help them. Because if they share these things with everyone, then they can be bullied, and they might um, people might tend to shut down those gifts, and then the child is going to be even more um, misunderstood, and so they will shut down their gifts further. And then yeah, there's nothing good coming out of it.
Exactly, and that's
Yeah.
it. It's allowing them a safe environment, that they can share or express that if they need to. And not talking with Natasha as well, which I know we've kind of connected, three of us, you know, and other people about this, really good point of not making such a big deal out of their gifts, because they are normal in many cases with children. We often label them, or you put it into a box around it being, something exceptional or something different to reality or what is normal. And it's bringing that spiritual aspect, or that awareness, to me, is allowing the children to feel safe that what they're experiencing is normal. And I don't really like that term normal, because it's
Right.
this, polarity between what is normal and what's not, where actually it just is, and I think honestly, I feel so overwhelmed with the work that you're doing in such a positive sense. Like, it's just so beautiful, and it's just so needed. And I would, my passion is to see schools emerging that have all these aspects in them, and just how beautiful that would be. And I believe it will happen. Even just talking to yourself and Natasha and a few other people, the conversations are already happening. I see things popping up, in my feed and things like that, around the work that's happening around the changes in the schooling system in schools. And it's just so beautiful to see. And I'm a little bit impatient, because I want it to happen now, and I'd love to be a part of that in New Zealand, and that movement to that. So that's really like my ultimate goal, is to try and bring together that type of schooling system in New Zealand. And it's just such a need for it. And I do think we're going to get there. So I know I had quite a few questions when we met, and just around defining, I guess, for lack of a better word, but gifted can mean quite a few things. And we spoke about how there's often a, what's the word? I don't know if it's a medical term, but, like a sort of like that industry term of what gifted might mean. Yeah. If you could just speak a little bit about that.
Yes. So the word gifted, or the definition of gifted, educationally, at least here in the United States and in other countries, but mostly here in the United States, refers to children who have a high IQ or intellectual ability, based on their performance on an IQ test or a cognitive test. And as a school psychologist, I'm very aware of all the limitations of IQ testing. And I know that there are other areas, and it changes, the definition changes by district. So there are some districts that are more open and they look at other areas like creativity or a teacher rating scale. And it's a little bit more global, like the definition is a little bit more global. But in general, gifted means someone who is academically gifted or someone who is, their IQs, they have a high IQ, an IQ of 130 or above. And the issue with twice exceptional children, so twice exceptional children are those who have been identified as gifted, and they also have learning challenges or something, some type of disability or a weakness that is not letting them perform at their best. So it could be an emotional challenge, so ADHD or autism, or like we shared, dyslexia, any type of emotional or learning challenge. So they are in what extreme they are gifted, they're highly intelligent, and in another extreme they have all these weaknesses that are not that are preventing them from giving their best and learning at their best. And so when we talked about gifted last time that we spoke, I know that gifted, it can be a very loaded word, and to me, it doesn't necessarily just mean someone with high intelligence. I know that there are gifted children or children who have gifted spiritual gifts, or, they're talented in music and they're talented in many other areas. But that, I guess that awareness or that openness, that gifted doesn't necessarily just mean academically gifted, is not there yet. I think we're moving towards that. And I would love to see, more people and more adults working with spiritual gifts and spiritual abilities. And I know a couple, I have a lot of friends in the field who are working in that area, and I love it. And I think this should happen more often, because these children need that support and they need those outlets to know that this is normal and that there's nothing wrong with them, that that those are things to embrace, and that they're actually things to celebrate and to use in life to help them with challenges and to help them navigate life better and with less suffering. So high intuition is one. I know a lot of kids who are highly intuitive, and a lot of my work is also helping them come from highly sensitive become highly intuitive. So understanding, what's going on with their bodies, and if someone is making them feel a certain way, how does that feel in their body? So a lot of somatic intelligence and somatic awareness. So giving them tools to understand what's happening how do you feel your anger? Where do you feel your anger? Or where do you feel your frustration? So some children might feel their frustration in their hands, and then or in their face. They might feel their pain in their heart or in their chest. And so giving them language about what's happening in their bodies based on different emotions, it's helping them become more aware and more intuitive. And just having more awareness of what's happening and becoming more self-aware is going to help them navigate social life and just life in general. So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, no, it definitely answers the question. Wow, that's just so amazing. So, so we talked about sort of that they have, challenges and disabilities, for lack of a better term. So, what would how would a parent understand that their child may need help? I mean, obviously, if they're not doing so well at school, but some of these, I would imagine, signs may be quite subtle. Are you able to maybe just talk to, when you think they may need to inquire about helping their children with this, or, is it normally quite obvious, or, is it something that kind of evolves? I guess there's a whole spectrum of you know, it may not be an answer that can be answered simply, but I just wondered, you know, if there is someone watching who is curious around whether their child might be twice exceptional. I mean, is it always quite obvious, I guess is what I'm asking, or I imagine there's different subtleties.
Yeah, it's not very obvious, and it's that's a really good question because a lot of parents or families, they're not aware of the term twice exceptional, and it's good. I guess I'm not really into labels, but it's a good thing to make some distinctions so that parents can give things a name, and then they can find help and strategies that are going to support their children. So with twice exceptional, the the um, the challenge is that it's not very obvious. So, for example, a child who's highly gifted.
I'm sorry, my cat. I said my cats would come in. He's really trying to talk to me. So sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I noticed that the sound was coming up with his meowing, but I'll give him a bit.
Don't worry. You do your thing. Yeah. So with twice exceptional children, sometimes their gifts can be so obvious, and they can be, they are very well spoken, and they have high and rich vocabulary. And then usually if they are struggling, those things might not show up until later, in maybe in high school or middle school, when things become so much for them and so overwhelming that they're not able to cope anymore or to compensate for what they were compensating before. So it's different in every case. Sometimes you might have preschooler or a child in the early, I don't know what they call it in New Zealand, but at the early years, usually is you can see that reflected in their behavior. So usually these kids are going to be the ones who have a lot of challenges with behavior, and sometimes they're the class clown, or they're so smart and they want to learn so badly, but the material is not even at their level, that they get bored in the classroom and they start to look for things to do. And then behaviors start to happen, and then the teacher doesn't know how to handle that, and then that becomes an issue. So a lot of the parents that come to me are families that are having issues with behaviors early, in the early years, and also families who their child is super smart and they don't even know what the struggle is, or what the weakness is. And so my job is to find that and to get all the information and put it all together, and then find what is the one thing preventing them from learning. And it doesn't necessarily mean that if they have I call them different abilities. So they might have I don't know, auditory processing issues, or maybe sensory processing issues, which is a big deal. And that's not pretty obvious. That's not something that adults or teachers can see. If there's a child who's very sensitive to lights, or to smells or sounds, or the way that clothing feels, or just sensitive to energy, or things that are out there and no one else sees them, it's not, they might not even know what the challenge is. But that affects their mindset and their self-talk and their confidence. And so a lot of the tools that I used are to help them understand their self-talk, and how they, their inner dialogue, and what they tell to themselves. I'm stupid, or I'm not smart, or things like that, that are really going to affect their just their whole self-concept and their ability to bring their gifts and their talents out. Because if there's always this focus on what is wrong with them, and this we're shining light into their what they're not able to do, and then we're forgetting about what are the things that they can do. So let's take a look at what are some of the things that they can do, and celebrate that, and play on their strengths as we mitigate or support their challenges, but always focusing on their strengths, so that there can be some confidence and some growth in self-esteem. And then they can start to work on building the skills that they need to support those areas of challenge. Because if we try to just fix what's wrong with them or try to make them fit what society think is normal, um, that's just not going to work with them, because these children are free spirits. They seek um, freedom, and they seek to be themselves, and they seek to be who they truly are. And if we're asking them to be what we think is normal and what society thinks is normal, that's just going to shut them down, and it's going to shut their gifts down. And um, yeah, so I think it's really about what you said before, normalizing the weaknesses. So I always tell children, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and you might be really good at this thing, and then you might not be so good in this other thing. And I share about my strengths and my weaknesses, so that they see, oh, everybody actually has strengths and weaknesses. It's not just one extreme or the other. Um, and that kind of guides them into looking for the areas where they are really good, and they can succeed, and where they are successful. And that, again, that brings some of that confidence that is going to help them with the difficulties and the challenges.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. I love that. Like the focusing on what they're good at and having that as the highlight. I mean, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it's so incredibly important. And I guess, coming from, I can, sympathize with parents that tend to focus on the what's not working because that's what they're worried about. And, and sometimes I think there's a lot of, I often myself have to check, like, is it my expectation of what I expect my child to be like or not be like? It's getting in the way of almost my ego, or, I don't want to, you may not want to be one of those parents that has that, someone who needs to work through with their children. I mean, that's not me personally, but, I can see how parents could get a bit clouded in, what people think of them and their family as well. We kind of get in the way. But I love the focusing on what the child does well. And there was something you said that was so amazing, was allowing them to, seek their freedom and, to be themselves. And it's so incredibly important. And yeah, just amazing stuff. So they just, I just really love about celebrating their strengths. I think that's, and it sounds so obvious and it's so simple, but it's something that I don't think we do enough. I have tried to, I tell my daughter how proud I am on a daily basis, and now I've kind of switched that from telling her how proud I am of her to encouraging her to be proud of herself. So there's that subtle distance of actually them feeling proud of themselves versus being told and needing that feedback. And it's more around them having confidence and not needing external validation, but actually providing their own validation. And it's something that's become through really strong with me the last couple of weeks. And I've just made those subtle differences. And I think that's really important to ingrain with the children, to have that appreciation of themselves, because we're often not taught that, right? We're often, like seeing my daughter light up when I say how proud I am of her is so beautiful, but I also want her to be proud of herself and not have to seek that validation. It's been an interesting concept for me to see that shift and to kind of apply the difference there. Amazing. So are there any tools that parents can use? You've kind of touched on a few there, but are there any sort of takeaway tools? I kind of feel like it's something that probably does need guidance for someone with your skill set, but is there things that parents can do to help? You have touched on a few, but yeah.
So I guess that really depends on the child and the family. I think every child is very unique. And one thing that you were mentioning about the empowerment, that's super important, because these children want to feel empowered, and giving them choices and giving the power back to them, so that, let's say, I don't know, it really depends on the type of issue or behavior, right? But let's say one thing that a lot of parents have difficulty with, maybe children with ADHD, for example, might have difficulties with transitions, or maybe they're watching something and they're watching TV or playing something that they want to continue playing, and then they're asked to do something else. One thing that parents could do is to give them the choice, or the power. So if there are routines that are, um, they're very well structured, and children know what's coming up, what's coming next, then parents can even help them. um, they can turn the TV off at certain times, so they know, right? So the child knows at 8 p.m. I'm supposed to turn the TV off, not because my parent asked me, but because that's the routine, and that's what's going to help me
Mm.
get some rest for tomorrow and be fresh for tomorrow and be ready. um, so giving them the power, and helping them see that what the parent wants is what is for their best interest. um, but sometimes when they're lost in their activities or whatever they're doing, they're not going to see that. They're just going to see a parent wanting them to finish something that they want to do, and it's no fun. And so just giving them that power, and helping them feel empowered, I think that's, in general, that's something really helpful. But it's really going to depend on the particular case, and the family. What are some of the strengths within the family? Sometimes I really play on the strengths of the family. They might have someone in the family that the child can really connect to very well, or they might have, I don't know, like different things that might happen in one family and not in another. So I'm always kind of looking for those strengths, so that we can build the best plan for the specific case of every child. And that just really depends. And I try to not focus too much on what's wrong, but what's available, and what we can use to help this child. I guess, yeah. Like, do you have any specific, maybe, examples that I can share about, like, what kind of tools parents can use, or something that comes?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. It's quite big, I think, around empowering the child and allowing them that choice. I think what's come up from many discussions through this series as well is that routine is really important. So although we want to acknowledge the child as an individual, they still need, and that routine still really helps them. And it sounds from what you're saying as well, that it really helps. I guess it provides a stability. Would that be, like it allows them to know or have familiarity with things that are happening in their day-to-day with that. And, definitely with a 4-year-old, she wants to be the decision maker and have the power to do everything. And so providing that choice is, works very, very well. And it's lovely to allow them that as well as they go through. It's how many sessions would you normally, would you normally have a general amount of sessions where you work with the parents and children? And I guess with that, do you work one-on-one with the child and then with the parents? Is it always both?
Well, it really depends. So usually what happens is I meet with the parent first, for, like, it depends. They reach out to me, and a lot of parents give me a lot of information via email or phone. And then I ask follow-up questions. And depending on that, we kind of work on this next session. So sometimes with younger children, we don't really meet. I try to do that only in person, but I'm not doing that as much anymore. So with younger children, because they're not necessarily very good with, remote learning and things like that. Um, but for older children, we have like a meet and greet. So before we even start working together, we make sure that we really are a good fit, because that's just really important. The match between the coach and the student is just super important. If that's not there, then if there's not going to be buy-in from the child. And the so I usually meet the child, and I guess I'm really good at finding, when I meet them, I already kind of know going on, and then I ask questions to see if that's the case, and then they feel really understood. Like, oh, this person knows me. How do they? And so there is that buy-in, and they do want to start working together. So we kind of put a plan together, depending on the family and their needs. It might be once a week. Um, uh, when we're going more into like a deep dive, when we're really working on some of those more intense behaviors, it's something weekly, and sometimes it just takes like a 1 or 2 strategy sessions to work with the parents, so that the parent can try some strategies with the child and test them out, and then they kind of come back to me and say, yeah, this worked, now let's work on these other skills, or let's work on this other thing. But it really depends on the family and what they're looking for and their specific needs of the child. um, so some something that I see a lot is, kids are very overwhelmed with school, and they are just to the point where they don't know how to deal with school anymore. And I also help them with the tools to organize themselves and time management skills, and some of the things that I struggled with as I was growing up, and that I had to develop just to create my own company, because otherwise it would have been a mess. So those are things that I had to work on. And I shared a lot of those strategies with children. And again, they feel really understood, and they feel like they can relate to that. So there's that buy-in. So if there's no buy-in, then the child is not really going to try those strategies out. So it's super important that they feel understood, and that they feel that the person really is going to help them, and that so that they can really truly listen to what the coach is saying.
That's amazing. And I just love how you use your intuition to kind of tune into the child and then allow them to feel safe with you, knowing and being able to relate with them. There was something you said just a little while back as well that kind of was a little bit light bulb moment with me, that often in the classroom, I guess, children that are struggling with the learning or are distracted, it's almost like, and what you said was kind of like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that, it's not that they don't understand the learning. I'd imagine often it's they're so intelligent that they've got it and now they're bored and they're not being engaged enough. So it's almost like not necessarily, that they're not understanding what's being taught. It's often that they're that intelligent at times that they need that more stimulation, and therefore they're playing up in the classroom and distracted and can't sit still because they're not being engaged with the almost the quality of learning that they need or the stimulation that they need.
Yeah, and this makes me think about one video that you sent me about this school where the kids they're moving around and they have lots of tools to let their energy
in the Netherlands
out. Like if you see that classroom, so kids are doing what they are needing at the moment, but they are learning. So a lot of children, and especially myself, like sometimes I need movement to learn. I need to move, and I need to I move a lot, and I'm standing up. I need to take multiple breaks and let some energy out. And so children moving around in a classroom like that, where children have different environments within the classroom and different sensory tools for different sensory needs. Some kids might need more input, some kids might need less input, some kids might feel overwhelmed and they can put some headphones on. So I actually work in a school like that, and it was really powerful. It was really helpful for kids. But those are private schools. You cannot really have a classroom like that in a public school system. So yeah, I think it's important to know, for parents and for teachers, to know what are some of the things that work for that child, and also get some input from the child. And know that no one learns the same way. That's part of the diversity and neurodiversity, and that's what makes life amazing, because we all have different strengths and different things that we bring to the table. So even in the workplace, no one learns the same way. But when children are asked to do the same thing and to fit in this box, that's just not, I don't think that's gonna continue for much longer.
No, I hope not. It's crazy when you think about it, though, isn't it? That we have one learning system, and it's this, and you know, and it's so sedentary. You know, like the sitting down and the, you know, just the delivery of the content, and it's just a one size fits all. And it just, you know, I don't even think probably the children that may not be challenged even, you know, would learn that well with that kind of structure. You know, they do, because I guess they can apply themselves, and it obviously fits with some children's learning ability. But it's just crazy to think that that's, you know, how we expect children and ourselves to learn, you know. Yeah.
And gifted children, they actually love learning. They seek to learn because they are hungry for learning. That's one of the features of being gifted, is that they want to learn, they want to experience the world, but their own way. So when you tell them how to learn, they're not really going to be too open to that. And I think that's one of the main issues, that we're not teaching children how to learn. If we give them the tools of how to learn, and then they can kind of seek their own learning and the things that they're interested in. So self-directed learning, for example, we can see that they're really successful, and then they can focus on other things that they have to, you know, they also have to learn. But there has to be a combination. It cannot just be, this is what you need to learn, and you're going to learn it my way, and if you don't learn it my way, then we're going to have issues. And yeah, so that's focusing on what's wrong with the systems. But I know that when you mentioned that that's going to change pretty soon, and there are conversations popping up all over the place, and I'm even like having conversations with other people who are wanting to create these spaces, it's really encouraging and really motivating and inspiring. And so I'm trying to focus on that, and move away from, you know, from the old, and focus on the new and what we can create. Knowing what's not working, we already know that. Now let's create what is really going to work and what's going to help. So I'm really excited about those conversations happening.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's interesting, isn't it, with the universe, like the more I've been focusing on that, the more in my feed there's things that just reinforce, or people, you know, I'm seeing people's posts that are doing amazing things or are challenging even the way subjects are taught versus dictative, you know, versus, well, how do we interpret this ourselves versus being told how something should work. Yeah, I just love all of that so much. I just love this conversation. It's just, you know, it's just so important, and I just love your work so much. With the work that you do, Day, do you work local, or, you know, can people contact you and you work, do you mostly work through media, or is it one-to-one physically?
So yeah, so I used to work physically, both physically and through, you know, Zoom calls and phone calls. That has obviously decreased. I'm not doing that anymore for the time being. I don't even know if that's going to happen soon. But yeah, through Zoom calls and through what I do is I send like a really comprehensive questionnaire to parents where they answer a bunch of different questions about what's going on, and then I kind of take the case and I do my thing, and then I get back to the parents, and then we kind of put things together to work through Zoom or via, you know, remote calls. But so I work with people from all over. Last time I had a call with someone from Spain, or just yeah, a lot of people from California, in New York as well. So people from all over. And I've been wanting to work more with people from other countries who speak Spanish, because I also speak Spanish. So it would be also super cool to call in. But yeah, people from all over. And I think right now, with the way things are, I think it's probably just going to be remote.
Yeah, that's true. We've kind of been pushed into that a lot more, and technology's, you know, wonderful for that, right? It's yeah, we're really lucky in regards to that. That's awesome. That's beautiful. Day, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up? What we'll do also, just if anyone's watching the replay, I can see Ariana's watching. Yeah, thank you. She's a beautiful conduit of spirit as well. So it's exciting to see she's on here. So if you are watching the replay, please do comment, and Dale, I can definitely respond, especially if you have questions. I'll also post a link to your website and your Facebook page. I was actually looking at one of your blogs recently as well. So you've got a great blog around what twice exceptional is and what that means to children, and some great examples. You use an example of a 7-year-old who may be highly intelligent but have emotional, like an emotion of a 3-year-old, and some great examples as I was reading through there. And you've got some free resources on there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been so amazing. The work that you're doing is just so incredibly important, and
Thank you, Natasha.
yeah, it's just beautiful.
No, thank you so
Anything
much.
else from you?
No, I think there was something I wanted to share, but it's gone.
You take a moment if you need.
No, I think, just for any parent who might be watching, just if you are curious about how to help your child if they are struggling, I think always focus on what's positive and focus on the things that your child is really good at, so that they can build that self-esteem and confidence, and then they can work on the things that are a little bit more difficult to work on, and the behaviors and the challenges and all of that. But yeah, and just acknowledge what your child is going through, be there for them, really show them that you are there, present, and that you're listening to their challenges and what they're going through, and acknowledge and honor those emotions and let them experience those emotions, because some of those emotions just need space to be and to come out, and just giving them the opportunity to do that, it's going to help a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well, is just allowing that emotion. I think it's really important. I have this, I think society, it's changing, but I think, often children and probably teens see, the show reel of Facebook where everything's great, and often, parents may not show emotion, and often they can go through life feeling like it's not normal to want to yell or scream or hit a pillow or cry, and I think, the more that they can witness that it's okay to do that, obviously within reason of what we present to them, but it's one of the things I really do with my daughter is allow her to, when she's really feeling like screaming and frustrated, and, I can give her a pillow or, just allow her to that release of that emotion or feelings that's coming up, because it's not healthy for it to be all sort of trapped and bottled inside. Right. I think younger children do that naturally anyway, but I think it's just learning to support them, and then that self-regulation. But yeah, it's so important. Yeah.
Like even adults, we need that, right? Like we use sound and sound healing and chanting and things like that to help us. But we all need outlets to let that energy and those emotions out appropriately and effectively.
Yeah.
In a healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Dave, thank you so much for your time. Yeah, it's been beautiful.
Thank you so much, Natasha. This was beautiful. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too, and we'll speak soon.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.